So welcome everybody. My name is Robert Friedman in Calgary. Patrick O'Leary, our Director of Operations from WestGrid, will be giving our introduction to WestGrid. Take it away.
Thanks, Robert. So this is the first session in our fall 2012 seminar series. We're doing things a little bit different this semester. We have 4 talks. Those 4 talks will be around 30 minutes, and the idea is that the local research support staff will be there for the remainder of the 30 minutes so that you can ask more specific questions. Allows you to get to know your local support group a little bit better. Today's talk is welcome to WestGrid. It's an introduction of what we have, new things that have come online, some events that are occurring that you should know about, and just basically the resources that we have. On October 17th, there'll be more of a step-by-step tutorial, so plan on that. On November 7th, if you've seen the poster, you probably saw some wonderful graphics on it. Those are provided by Falk Herwig's research. He's the Associate Professor of Astronomy and Physics at the University of Victoria. And so he'll talk about how he utilizes WestGrid systems to do his research, and probably more about his research. On November 28th, we'll have a presentation on our collaboration resources. All of you are part of it right now. You're looking at our collaboration resources, but you may have a desire to have personal meetings or research group meetings, and you want to take advantage of the system. So on November 28th, there'll be a talk about how to use those things. So how about slide 1? So again, I'm the Director of Operations. My job is basically to try to keep the systems up and running as much as possible. I don't touch the systems, but I try to coordinate what we're doing with those. On slide 2, we're looking at WestGrid, Compute Canada. WestGrid is one of the, I'm going to ask you to go back, yeah, sorry. WestGrid is one of the at least 3 or 4 regional consortia that make up Compute Canada. Compute Canada is the national platform that integrates high-performance resource across the country. They provide high-performance computers, storage resources, open source software, commercial software in some cases, collaboration tools, visualization facilities, all for academic research computing across the country. WestGrid is the regional provider for the West. We have 14 partner institutions across British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And so it's a user community, and the resources are provided operationally by a distributed but cohesive team of technical and systems staff. A lot of them are in the room with you currently, and hopefully after I finish talking, you'll have a chance to meet them and get a lot more specifics. Next slide. So the first thing you probably want to know, if you don't already have one already, is how to get an account. And it's a 2-step process, and a lot of people have trouble with this. The first thing you have to do is register with Compute Canada. Compute Canada doesn't provide any accounts, and so the biggest confusion is that you register with Compute Canada, and why can't I log into a system? Well, after you've registered with Compute Canada, and you see a link there, and it has great online captures of what you do step by step to register with Compute Canada, the second thing you need to do is to pick a consortium account. And so in step 2 for us, it's applying for a WestGrid account. And if you follow the link that I have on there, it will send you to apply for one of our accounts. If you have any problems or any questions about accounts, you should send an email to accounts@westgrid.ca. And then here are some tips that usually trip some people up. First, turn on cookies. Okay, if you don't hear back from the system when you're applying for an account or registering with Compute Canada, it may be because you didn't turn cookies on, or perhaps it has been classified, the emails have been classified as spam. So also check your spam directory to see if the emails are going in there. Another thing that causes a lot of problems and will slow the activation of an account is Grid Canada certificates require an institutional email address. So when you're applying for a WestGrid account, we create a certificate, a Grid Canada certificate simultaneously. If you chose to provide us with a Google account or a Yahoo account or whatever, this will slow down the process because Grid Canada will not accept these emails, and we will have to communicate with you a number of times to say, do you have an institutional email address? If you want a certificate, you're going to need to provide that to us. So if you want the process to work really smoothly, provide us with your institutional email address. If you don't have one, we can still work with you, but it will require a couple more emails. In general, we'll process your application in around 2 working days. Next slide. There are also some systems in WestGrid that require a special procedure. Hungabee, Jasper, Breezy, Lattice, Parallel, they require that you send an additional email to accounts@westgrid.ca for access. We suggest that you put in the subject line for fast response the system name and account request, and then in parentheses username. The system name should be Hungabee or Jasper or Breezy or Lattice or Parallel from above. And then the username we're looking for is the WestGrid username. In the body of the email, please put a justification of why you need access to these specialized machines. They have more storage, or they have more main memory, or they have GPUs or something like that. So how does your work fit into these types of systems? Note that, we do receive requests every now and then where somebody's asking for all of them at once, but the justification just doesn't work for all of them. Hungabee has 16 terabytes of shared memory, and Parallel is a distributed cluster. Chances are the code won't, or your justification won't satisfy those type of diverse needs. So go ahead and send in a separate email for each one of those systems. Next. So when you want to get started, the first thing I would do is go to the WestGrid website, to westgrid.ca/support/quickstart/new_users. And if you go there, it's kind of the kitchen sink of how to use WestGrid. It's got lots and lots of details. And you may not get through it or need all that information at this point in time, but go ahead and bookmark the page. Come back to it when you're ready. In addition to that, you may pick a specific system that you want to start working on. For example, Lattice. Read the quick start guide for that system. So you would go to westgrid.ca/support/quickstart, and then you'll have a list on the left-hand side where you can pick the individual machine. And so pick Lattice's, and in there you'll find more unique information to that system, such as the exact hardware that it has, the quotas that it has for storage in home and in Scratch, the interactive use policies, like how can I grab a node and run an interactive process on it, and then the batch job specifics. How can I submit a batch job, for how long, what are the defaults, all of those types of things. If Lattice is your particular system, you'll probably want to bookmark that page because you'll want to go back there when your jobs change to see what kind of specifics you can enforce or suggest on your jobs down the road. Next slide, please. If you find that those aren't enough, and in general, we have questions all the time that aren't captured in the web pages, getting help is pretty easy. First of all, I'd start at westgrid.ca/support. We have a large list of things on there that might be on our website already. Please note that over on the right-hand side are the system notices. They're on every single page. And on system notices, we usually advertise our scheduled outage times when we're going to take a system down for maintenance, and also our unscheduled. So if we have a problem with a disk or something like that that you need to know about, it'll be listed on that page. So that would be the first place I would go to if I couldn't get to a system at a certain period of time. I'd look over there on that left-hand side, and those are updated in a timely manner. After that, if you can't find what you're looking for at the website, feel free to contact us via email. We have accounts@westgrid.ca for accounts help. And we have, for issues and questions, support@westgrid.ca. Remember that we are a distributed body. We have systems at a number of sites and a number of systems at a number of sites. And so you may ask the question, why isn't my job running on the system? But if you don't tell us which system, it'll be difficult to look for it. So I suggest the subject for your emails to be the system that you're interested in and the issue or question that you have. Next. So it's that time of year again. We're doing resource allocations. We're open for proposals now. I think we opened last week, probably Wednesday or Thursday. The deadline for resource allocation proposals is October 11th, 2012. And these are for principal investigators who need above the default allocations to do their work. And that could be CPU time, it could be storage, it could be a number of things. The allocation proposal forms are located at the Compute Canada, ccdb.computecanada.ca/allocation/resource_applications. It's our front page story on our website, so if you just want to remember westgrid.ca, you'll see that information there. And can we go back to that page? Otherwise, I'll just bring it up and talk. I may have got out of sync. Sorry about that. All right.
Sorry, Patrick, was there something you needed me to do on the slides?
Yeah, I was on the wrong page, but I'm getting back there. So I want to be on the resource allocation slide, the first one. So note that it is strongly recommended that all applicants consult with Compute Canada technical staff responsible for the systems that they intend to use well before completing their proposal. If you have any questions about resource allocations, please contact rac@computecanada.ca. So there's some other helpful hints that you might want to know about resource allocation. This year, we have a new process. There's an online form, as there was last year, but in addition to that, you're required to use a specified template for your technical and scientific justifications. The template is available in Word or LaTeX format, and researchers are encouraged to look at that early so that they can review what is required and ask questions if needed. Number two, if you haven't had an allocation in the past, you must consult with technical staff. The reason for this is that we want to know what your needs are, and we can only do that if maybe we could read your proposal and understand everything, but to help us in the process, it'd be wonderful if we could visit with you at prior to submission. The second thing is you may not know what allocations look like. And so talking with technical staff, they can kind of help guide you in producing a reasonable justification for your needs. Number 3, users must have used the Compute Canada systems within the last year. Okay? In very special cases, this can be waived, but you should contact technical staff to ensure that the application will be accepted. Number 4, if you are requesting significant more resources than you've used in the past, you must provide a justification for those, this increase in resources. And if last year you had a resource allocation and you weren't able to fully utilize it, you must provide an explanation of why that is. And then finally, some people submit applications without understanding the default on the particular machine. And that's listed at the Compute Canada website, what the default allocations are. And if you submit an allocation that is lower than the default allocation, it will not be reviewed unless you tell somebody that there's special requirements, such as a bursty workload or something like that. So keep these in mind as you apply for allocations. Next slide. Security is important to everyone, and because this is a shared environment where you're not working alone, you're working with the 2,000 other users on the systems across WestGrid, we encourage you to consider security also. First of all, use a strong password. There's a number of websites online that teach you how to make a strong password that you can remember. So please do that. Number 2 is we use SSH, but we don't allow passwordless SSH on our systems. So please don't set that up, and please don't use that. Sharing files. Sharing accounts is not permitted. It's strictly prohibited in our terms of use. And so when you sign up for Compute Canada, that is one of those items on that list that you agree to. If you have a group of users who would like to share files, we can do this through the Unix Groups facilities. Each WestGrid account has its own group, but we can make an additional group where you and other members of your lab or colleagues can become members of that group, and then you can use standard Unix commands to make the files owned by that group and then permit access to that group. If you have questions about that, that's on our support page. It's at westgrid.ca/support/Unix_groups. For shared accounts, remember they're not permitted, but there's a special kind of account which can be set up for projects to allow several users to start jobs under one ID. A shared account cannot be logged into by password access at all. Specified users may access a shared account by using their Grid Canada certificate. If you feel that this is important for your work or your project, please email support@westgrid.ca and they can walk you through the process. Next slide. So WestGrid has now over 38,000 cores for processing for computational work. We have systems from Breezy, Bugaboo, Checkers, Grex, Hermes, Hungabee, Jasper, Lattice, Nestor, Orsinus, Parallel, and a few others which I left off the list. You can see from the graph that I showed you that the colored quantities on the chart are allocations or use on the system, and you will see that the default users use a significant amount of WestGrid resources. Anyone with color is a default allocation on a specific machine. So you see Orsinus, Parallel, Bugaboo, Grex, Lattice, Nestor, Glacier, and Checkers all have colors there, and they all appear on the list as the top users for those machines. So having a default allocation is still access to an incredible amount of resources. Next slide. So this slide, I just kind of want to demonstrate that there's different kinds of workloads on different machines. The little charts that you see are small, and I'm not expecting you to be able to read them, but you can see that, you know, if it's a solid rectangle, it's probably used, you know, nearly 100% on every day. And if it's not, then there's probably some bursty workloads that go on there. So Breezy has, you know, a specific architecture with very, very large main memory, and not all jobs can utilize that memory, so it provides more of a bursty workload over there. Where you can see on Grex that, you know, it's about a solid rectangle. It runs most of our Gaussian jobs, and it's utilized every day. I think they serve between 1,000 and 1,500 Gaussian jobs on every day, all year long. So those are the different types of workloads that you'll see on those systems. If you have more questions about what's appropriate to system for your work, send a message to support at westgrid.ca, and we'd be glad to help you find the right resource. Next slide. We do have some specialized computational resources, and we'd like you to keep these in mind when you're trying to submit jobs to them. The first is our large memory machines. We have Hungabee, which is 16 terabytes of shared memory. So every processor could access up to 16 terabytes in their job. So it's an extremely large shared memory machine. Breezy has 256 gigabytes per node. Each node has 24 cores. In general, we run serial jobs on here that, or jobs that are limited to one node that access up to 256 gigabytes. And then on Grex, it has 48 gigabytes per node, which is larger than most of our systems. So these are our large memory systems. Good thing to remember is Grex is a universal system or a general system, which you get access to as soon as you apply for an account. But remember that there's a Gaussian reservation on there for approximately 1,000 cores. We move that up and down according to the request, the needs at a given time, and it can fluctuate up to 1,500 cores. To get access to Breezy and Hungabee, expect to justify your request of needing more memory than offered by Grex or the other computers. For a large number of processors, we have Orsinus, which has over 9,000 cores in parallel with over 7,000 cores. So if you have a large distributed code, these will be great for your workload. Also on parallel, there's 180 GPUs, 3 per node. So if you have a GPU-enabled code, this may be one that you're interested in. And finally, our serial or small number of processor systems. We have Bugaboo, which Bugaboo has a large amount of storage available to it right next to the machine. So if you have large databases or a large amount of storage that you need to do, and you're doing serial or small number of processor jobs, that's a great place to go. And then Checkers and Hermes also provides a reasonable resource for those types of jobs. Next slide. Our storage resources are distributed just like our computational resources, but our main site is low. It has 3.4 petabytes of spinning disks. We have the home directory, which is backed up, and the /data directory, which is not. And then we have 2.6 petabytes of tape backup. I think I have 2.4 on the slide there. Sorry about that. Then Bugaboo has 2.4 petabytes of spinning disks. The home is backed up. Scratch is not. And then Nestor, right now, what I have is about 0.5 petabyte, but I think they've done an expansion, so this isn't up to date. But Home is backed up and Scratch is not. Next slide. And because you first register with Compute Canada, you are a member of Compute Canada, and WestGrid has 11 large systems. It has a number of other smaller systems, but 11 large systems. You also will have access to the other consortium's systems. And so at AceNet, you'll see 6 systems, and Compute Quebec has a number of systems, and so does Compute Ontario. Their process for getting accounts is similar to WestGrid's, at least at the start. It may differentiate, it may be different after that initial phase of going to requesting a consortium account. Overall, Compute Canada has around 200K cores, so there's a number of processors available. If I put this graph on the slide, again, so you would see that default allocation is using a significant amount of the resources. That's the dark blue. The rack users use a significant amount, but you will also see that there's a number of processors or cores available for your work. And with that, I'll move to the question time. Realize that you have technical expertise on a system-by-system basis in that room. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you feel would go beyond that.
Transferring data from, say, Alberta Health Services network into the WestGrid network, how do you usually do it?
So can I ask the site leads or the technical staff to help me out on that? I heard probably the last part of the question, but it was a little soft for me to understand.
If you're working at the Foothills campus for the Faculty of Medicine in Calgary, you want to get data onto the WestGrid computers, what's your normal workflow?
So you're at the Foothills campus. Are we talking about medical data?
Anonymized.
Okay.
With confidentiality, approval, etc.
Okay. So I am still going to refer you to your local group there, okay, just because anonymized is not a great word for us.
Assume then you're at home, all right? You're not
okay, fine. So if you're at home, our normal way of moving data, go ahead.
Onto the grid.
Yeah, so moving data onto WestGrid, I think that there would be more questions I would ask you. And instead of asking you each one of those, I'll just kind of give a couple scenarios. So if you were wanting to use Lattice and your data that you were going to move onto Lattice was within your quota, okay, and I think the quota on Lattice is about 500 gigabytes in your home in your Scratch directory and about 250 maybe in the home directory, and your local staff can tell you the right numbers there in a minute. If your data is smaller than that, then you may wish to just transfer the data to that local machine, and you can use SCP, okay? If you're using Windows, there's a WinSCP program that you can use to transfer the data. If you're on a Linux system, there's SCP is the command that you would use to transfer the data. And if you're on a Mac system, it's also SCP to transfer data to that system. How you would actually set up the command, I would probably send you to the web page or local support if you haven't used that before, and they could walk you through how to use that. If your data is larger than your quotas, then how much larger? If it's a little bit and you're always going to need it next to your computation, then I would contact local support there and see if you, if there was a, you had a reasonable justification to increase your quota size, and then maybe you would transfer it there. But then you have larger storage available to you at Silo, okay? And you could use SCP again to transfer any data that you needed to over in Silo. You should remember that /home is backed up data, so if it's also important to have a backup of the data, you would want to transfer that to /home. Otherwise, you're free to put it into /data at that point in time also. And so you have, you know, a number of quotas on Silo, and you have some quotas on individual machines. Now, I'm sure that I didn't answer the exact question that you wanted, but somebody there in the room can.
SCP, it sounds like the right answer. I'm more worried about, you know, you've got a half a terabyte of data. It's going to take a week to do it over the network. Do you have like another mechanism, you know, pick up a box, connect it to a network here?
Again, I think at sites, at a site-per-site basis, they may have a better alternative for moving it. The last mile, you know, the last mile of the network, we really don't control that much. We have a high-speed network that connects all of our resources, and we're connected to the larger high-speed network that connects all of Compute Canada resources. But getting onto that system is difficult. So I would talk to your local staff there. I've seen at Calgary, they've answered the question a number of times with people on how to facilitate that type of work. Thanks for the question. Anyone else?
So just so you know, Patrick, by the way, USask didn't unilaterally leave on you there. They had a fire alarm go off, so they had to leave.
I thought it was something I said.
Exactly. I believe we have a question from the University of Alberta.
Hello. I'm going to need help with that question. I can't hear it.
Hey, Mike, I got a question. So actually, I did have a simulation run on Bungaboo maybe 2 weeks ago, and I actually requested 72 calls. But it took me almost 4 hours to, you know, in the queue. But actually, the compute, you know, runtime only 1 hour. So I just wonder what's going on when I submit a PBS job, and how fast I could go. I mean, you know, in the future, I'm going to maybe request more than 100, something like that. So.
Yeah. So we get these questions all the time. And so we have different queuing policies on different machines, and that's listed in that start guide. And so on some machines, you will find that the wait time is significantly longer than it is on other machines. And it's not because it's less busy or it has a more reasonable queuing time. It's just because it's set up for a different type of job. So I'm going to use Grex, for example, instead of your situation at Bugaboo, because I think if we try to discuss your Bugaboo one without any data, I won't be able to answer the question. And I'm not going to be able to answer the question at this point in time. But if I go to Grex, Grex has a large number of reservations for Gaussian jobs, and it has a large number of users who submit those jobs. Those jobs typically request entire nodes. So they have to have a whole node where all the cores are empty on that, okay? And so you may have to wait significantly longer to get a resource like that where you're requesting a full node of cores as opposed to being able to spread it over a number of cores. Also, it's the number of users that are submitting jobs and how many jobs they're submitting. It's just the whole application ecosystem on the system that tells you how things are running. So we'll have people who submit 10,000 jobs at one time on Grex. And so that will fill up the queue, okay? And so things won't move through it in what you may think is a reasonable time frame. Those are usually really short jobs, and they do flush, within a day, but you may wait 24 hours before your job goes through at that point in time. Those are usually bursty cycles where somebody says, I'm going to run 10,000 today, but they won't run any for a while. Then the other thing is we have resource allocations, which I talked about for a while, and those people have higher priorities because they've asked for more resources and they put in a justification and it was reviewed by a scientific committee and a technical committee across Canada to highlight their science and to provide them with the extra resources, and they may just have a higher priority than you. And if you've been running for a while, you may have exhausted your allocation. It doesn't mean that it's gone forever, but you may have exceeded your allocation compared to other people, and they may be passing you in the queue. So it's very complicated. If you find that this is something that occurs a lot, what I would do is I would contact support, and I would say, these are the types of jobs I'm running. They'll look at your history on how many jobs you've submitted. They'll look at your current priority, what your priority is on average, and they'll be able to talk you through that so that they could find maybe a better machine for you or a better way to submit your jobs. Sorry, I couldn't answer the specifics.
The second question. So actually, the reason I picked up Bungaboo because it has, PASC and Python, but as far as I know, for other, cluster doesn't have, such kind of software. So is that possible, to request whatever manager to install those software in other clusters? Because it seems to me other, facilities. Is that possible?
Yeah. So, open source freeware software isn't free. Okay, it requires somebody to install it and maintenance and those types of things. However, we have under westgrid.ca/support, you're going to see a software list over there. If you take a look at the software list, it will list what computers we have Python on. It will list the version that we have. Sometimes they'll add extra resources, and that will be listed in there. So you'll see NumPy and some of those things with Python added on to those in that area. If you're missing something, definitely send a request to support. If it's software that we install for everybody, a universal install, then it's something that they'll consider. They'll and in most cases install it for you. If it's something that we don't already have as a universal software, they'll consider it for installing it as a universal, or they might walk you through the process of installing it in your local account. So yeah, go ahead and make those requests, send them to support, and they'll help you through that process.
I believe we have a question at UBC.
UBC?
Yes, is there also support for custom applications? So if we were to produce our own binaries, let's say, that are compatible with the architecture used on those computers, would we be able to run that binary on multiple cores, let's say?
I want to just say yes, but I also think that you're going to have to work with the technical staff there. So when you say that you produce an executable binary and it's compatible with the system, it could be compatible with the system, but it could run incredibly slow on that system because it's not a complete match for the architecture on what you compile. So yes, if you have a binary and it's compatible with the system, chances are you'll be able to use that one, but please talk to your local staff because they can help you. They may want to recompile it so you're optimized for running on that system and you get better performance. Your better performance provides better performance or more resources to everybody else. So we want people to be optimized as much as possible on their code so that we share the resources better. Other questions?
So I have a question about the software which are installed on server. So if you want to request new software, how we can request it or how can we install it? So the question is, for example, we need Stata, which is data analysis software, but it's already not on the WestGrid. So how can we request?
Yeah, so Stata, I think, is a commercial software.
Yep.
Yeah, so for commercial software, we actually have a link on the westgrid.ca where you can request commercial software. Obviously, since it costs money, we have to consider whether that's the software we want to buy, okay? Now, how do we do that? It's difficult. There's a lot of great software out there and only a small amount of money. So send those in and see if we can purchase that software. If you have the software or licenses, there's a number of ways that we can leverage your license, perhaps. So talk to your local support staff. They can help you with that. We have a number of commercial software licenses that are leveraged from people's workstations or from server systems at the local universities. So I want you to be able to talk with your local staff. It's not that I'm trying to be lazy and get out. I just want you to be able to mingle with the people who are actually doing majority of the work. And so I'm looking at UBC right now, and I see Roman's right there, and I want you to know who he is and visit with him. So I'm going to say goodbye, and I want to thank you for your time. And I'm hoping the next 15 minutes to 20 minutes, you interact with some of the people that actually are more involved with the system, and that this is a great experience, and you come back on the for the step-by-step tutorial in a couple of weeks. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And for all the other sites, I will leave the connections up, although you can feel free to stay muted. If you did want to talk to one of the other sites specifically, though, feel free to unmute your mic and go ahead. And then I'll disconnect everyone probably in about 15 minutes. Thank you all for attending.